Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. We're so glad to have you here with us in Westminster Hall and those of you on live stream. This is the largest attendance we've ever had for one of our forums, so thank you very much. Actually, we should probably be thanking Cathy. Today, we're especially glad to hear from Cathy Wurzer, a Broadcast Hall of Fame member. After a welcome prayer by the Reverend Megan Gage-Finn, Andy Peterson, a Third Age Committee member, will introduce Liz Quam, who has had the privilege of working with Cathy. There will be time for questions after Cathy's presentation. For those of you on live stream, just type your questions into the chat and I'll forward them up to Cathy. Afterwards, when we're all done, we'll have refreshments in Westminster's Commons outside here with time to socialize together. Is everyone ready? Okay, Megan, will you please lead us in prayer?
Good afternoon. On behalf of the pastoral staff, welcome here to Westminster. It is good to be together for this conversation. Welcome to those of you who are joining us on the live stream. Let us pray. O Holy One, we give you thanks for this day, for the ways that you draw us in and fill us up and send us out together to be your people in community. Prepare our hearts and our minds to receive the wisdom offered in our conversation today. And we give you thanks for the life of Bruce Kramer, for all in him that was good and kind and faithful and just, and for the ways that his life helps us to understand better our own. Thank you for Cathy Wurzer and the thoughts that she will offer, and for the deep relationship that they shared in learning and in living and toward dying. All of this we offer in your holy name. Amen. And I'd like to welcome Liz Quam. Oh, or Andy or Liz Quam. Sorry.
Well, I am so very pleased we can be here today to ponder how we are living with the end in mind. Our guest is best known as a broadcaster and author, currently with both Minnesota Public Radio and TPT's Emmy Award-winning Almanac. Some of us remember Cathy's stints, Rocky does, during her time at CCO and KSTP, and one of us remembers her time working at the Minnesota Medical Association in the mid-'80s. Cathy was then 10 years old, and I was 15. She is also the author of the much-beloved Highway 61 book called Tales of the Road. Many of us recall the poignancy of her interviews with University of St. Thomas's Bruce Kramer in the 2010s, resulting in this book, We Know How This Ends. By the way, you can still pull up the Wurzer-Kramer interviews on the NPR website. I checked yesterday morning. In Cathy's foreword to the Kramer book, she quotes author Rainer Maria Rilke, quote, "Do not now see the answers. They cannot be given you because you would not be able to live them. The point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distance day into the answer." Cathy, we are so happy to have you lead us into living some of these questions. We warmly welcome you.
Oh my goodness sakes, look at all of you fine-looking folks. I get to actually see my audience. I usually don't get to see my audience. Would you mind if I sit down, because I just need to do that today? Liz, oh, for goodness sakes, it's true. Very few people remember my short tenure at the Minnesota Medical Association, and poor Liz had to put up with me when I was a young snot. I was young, weren't we all at one time? So, yeah. It is so nice to be here. So very nice to see you all. Thank you. And you know what? I'm going to go up here and get my clicker. All of a sudden I realized something. I'm going to have to go ahead and click through my slides. I tend to not work with slides, but I wanted to today because, as Liz mentioned, and we're going to wade into the fraught waters of PowerPoint, so I do have audio on some of these slides, so I want you to meet Bruce, in case you haven't met Bruce already. When I talk about him, I want to try to bring him into the room with us, in a sense, so I'm going to hear his voice, you're going to hear his voice, so I'm hoping that all the slides work today. Not that there's any pressure in that, but we'll see what happens. So, I know that title is a little bit provocative, how a dying man taught me how to live. But it's true, I think. The dying can certainly be teachers, they're excellent teachers of the living, if the living are willing to open their hearts and minds and listen and be with the dying person. It's a scary thing, but I do think the dying are excellent teachers of the living. And Bruce certainly was my teacher in so many different ways. So this is Bruce Kramer. Now I'm just curious, it's been a little while. Did anyone ever listen to our conversations on the air? Just curious. Holy moly, look at that. Okay, thank you, appreciate that. So Bruce was an amazing guy. I met Bruce, 2011, which seems eons ago, doesn't it? 2011. And it really was a meeting I didn't want to have, to be completely honest with you. Although that meeting was the beginning of this extraordinary journey that I never saw myself taking to walk alongside a person who was slowly dying of a disease. And in Bruce's case, it was ALS. So this journey that I took, certainly not willingly, began after being badgered by a coworker at NPR News, Mike Mulcahy, in case you remember that name. Mulcahy I loved Mulcahy, and of course he's now retired, so he's doing great. I'm still working, but he's retired. So Mulcahy knew Bruce. They went to church together, and Bruce is United Methodist, and so is Mulcahy. And Mike said, "Hey, Wurzer, there's this guy at church, and he is blogging beautifully about his life with ALS. You really should talk to him on Morning Edition." And I said, no, I can't even imagine that. Who would want to do that? And Mulcahy, bless him, was like a gnat buzzing around my head for weeks on end. He'd come back and keep at it and keep at it. And he said, "I'm telling you, if you get this guy in studio, you're never going to forget him." I thought, just to get Mulcahy off my case, I will have this gentleman in my studio. And to be honest with you, in journalism, we tend to do these things called one and dones. We bring you into the studio or we talk to you, and we know darn well we're not going to talk to you ever again. It's a one and done. So I thought, I'll get Mulcahy off my case. It'll be fine. So Bruce came in, and he had a cane when I first met him. And of course, if you know ALS, it's a progressive disease, progressive neurological disease. So Bruce came in with his cane, sat down, and we talked for 2 hours. 2 hours. And it was the fastest 2 hours that I've ever experienced. And it was an amazing conversation because Bruce was an amazing individual. And at the end of this conversation, he was certainly a natural-born teacher. He loved teaching so much. And as Liz mentioned, he was at the University of St. Thomas. He was the dean of the College of Education. So Bruce was a natural-born teacher. And as we got done with that 2-hour conversation, he looked at me and he said, "Well, do you want to have any more conversations?" And I said, "I wasn't planning on it, but I think maybe we could do another one. Where do you see this going? I mean, how far are you willing to take this? What are you thinking? Because you must have a plan here. And he said, well, I've been listening to you for years. You're just this cheerful voice that comes to the radio, but I think you're the perfect person to help me take this journey public. And I'm trying to think, I looked at him, I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, what if I joined you every month and we'll just talk about life? What's it like to live with a disease that you know is going to kill you? And I said, Bruce Kramer, I don't even know you. I've met you for 2 hours here, and that sounds like the most ridiculous idea I've ever heard. And he said, well, let's just give it a shot. And then if you hate it, we just, let it go. So we started our conversations. That's how it began. And I remember thinking to myself, maybe this might go 2 or 3. No, it went 3 to 4 years of talking to this gentleman. He was truly a person that changed my life. He, among many things, taught me that death, as you all know, is just another stage of life, right? It's a great adventure because we don't really know what comes after once this body of ours quits working. So he and I certainly talked about death. I have notes here because I no longer am able to do this off my top of my head after getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm sorry about that. So he taught me a lot about dying, but he really did teach me a lot about living. And he approached his impending death with what I thought was so interesting at the time, curiosity. Bruce was a very curious person, so he approached his death with curiosity. And he leaned into the experience. He truly lived into his death instead of fearing it, because he thought, look, I'm going to try to go out with as much life as I can. So I'm going to try to play this. Hopefully this is going to work, because as I say, I like to bring Bruce into the room when I'm talking about him.
ALS doesn't triumph. Yes, it takes the body, but it doesn't win. So I couldn't be afraid. The opposite of love is fear. It's not hate, it's fear. We do very strange things out of fear. We fear that we're not going to have enough, and we think we can accrue more, and we think that will make all the difference. And to a point, that's true. But there's another point where that's just a lie. So the things I wrestle with, the angels I wrestle with, are really more about losing the petty fears that I have and allowing the vulnerability and the love to emerge.
Oh my gosh, I haven't heard his voice in such a long time. It's almost as if he's sitting on my shoulder. It's pretty interesting. He, among the many lessons Bruce Kramer taught me, was to be vulnerable, and how vulnerability is actually a strength. As a journalist, you don't want to exude vulnerability at all, because, of course, it just is not part of our shtick as journalists. You need to be strong because you run into all manner of mayhem, death and destruction, terrible things, and you have to kind of put up a force shield in front of you, so you don't want to really be vulnerable. And Bruce was very, he had the ability to see through a lot of different things. And he nailed me right out of the gate about this lack of vulnerability that I had when I first met him. And he, little by little, just kind of chipped away at that thick armor that I had developed over all these many years being a journalist. So when he talked about vulnerability, that was one of the big lessons that I took away from Bruce. One of the things that we agreed to, and initially when we made this deal, that he would join me on Morning Edition once a month, it would be a pre-taped conversation. He said, okay, so what we're going to do here, if you're okay with this, is you're going to follow me all the way through to the end. And I went, yeah, to the end what? And he said, to the end of my life. Are you okay with that? And I thought, wow. I said, what does that look like? And he said, I don't know. I've never died. I don't know what that's going to look like. He said, but if you're okay with it, I do want you to be with me at the end, if you're okay with that. And that is when, and I remember he brought this up, and I was not sure if I was equipped to do that at all. At this time, 2011, my personal life was in shambles. My father had been diagnosed with dementia. So a lot of stuff was going on, and I thought, man, I honestly don't think I am the right person to take this man's story on. I just don't think I'm equipped. And if you remember the name Dan Olson in our newsroom, Dan Olson was a fantastic storyteller, and I thought, oh, Olson will be perfect for this. I'm gonna ask Dan to get involved in this, and I'm just gonna bow out because I am not equipped, and I just don't think I want to take on this man's pain. And I remember sitting in my studio thinking about this when he brought this up, and he left the studio, Bruce did, and I burst into tears, which I never do publicly, and I thought, this is ridiculous. I'm just kind of losing my mind. What's happening with me? And I thought at that moment, well, gosh, maybe I am the right person to do this work. So I said to Bruce, yep, okay, I'll be with you to the end. And we marched forward for those 4 years together through thick and thin. And he had his own Bruce Kramer fan club, actually. If people would listen. And I remember my bosses at NPR, who are no longer there, not happy at all. We were doing this because it was death in the morning. Death at 7 o'clock in the morning is not going to be great. And I had editors saying, you got to quit. You got to quit doing this. This is not breakfast material. However, Bruce, God bless Bruce knew and wasn't interested in the intricacies of ALS as a disease. He never really got into it's a gross disease. It really is an awful disease. He didn't really go there. He was interested in the philosophical questions about living, and he was a deep thinker. So we were not on the surface with this guy. He was deep, and listeners loved it. Listeners loved it. They started sending him fan letters. He was so excited because he found a whole new audience for a teacher. And so we kept sailing it under the radar every month. Finally, management said, okay, guess we got something here. Keep going. So I was there at the end of Bruce's life. And that was life-changing for me. My father was toward the end of his life. He had died prior to Bruce, just a few months prior. And Bruce had asked me to be there as he was taking his last breath. But before he did, he summoned up this strength. And it was very hard to hear him because he was having trouble breathing. And he said, he thanked me, I thanked him, and then he said, I want you to look for the ripples in our work. And at that point, I said, well, Bruce, I love you, you are my friend, which is another whole problem as a journalist to befriend a subject. So I was kind of on thin ice on that one. But I said, you are my friend, I love you, I'm going to miss you, but I don't understand what the ripples are that you're talking about. And he said, don't worry, you will know it when you see it. And that was the last thing he said. And that was in March of 2015. So I held up my part of the deal. And I thought, what could these ripples be that he's been talking about? I mean, for goodness sakes, we did all these radio interviews, we did this book together that he was so excited about. What other ripples could there be? And I decided, what am I good at? I'm pretty good at flapping my gums. I can talk, and I'm pretty good at asking questions. And so we started a lot of the work that Bruce and I did, of course, was honestly talking about death and planning for the inevitable. And then, of course, the other big life questions that were in there, too. So I decided, well, what the heck? What if we came up with like a show, kind of like a stage show, in a sense, and we brought it around the state of Minnesota. That's in Ely. That was the first one we did. Why Ely? I don't remember. But we were in Ely, and we did a show to a sold-out crowd. It was a free show. Tons of people showed up, and we talked about death and dying and Bruce Kramer and how do you live with the inevitable disability and illness that we're all going to have before we die. And people really liked it. And so we thought, well, okay, we must have something here. So we're going to take this and create kind of like a traveling show, in a sense, and take it around the state of Minnesota. And we went all over the place. And then I got the brilliant idea, what if we did a nonprofit? Wouldn't that be interesting? What if we started a nonprofit to take this around the state of Minnesota? And what if we did live events and podcasts and retreats and all of that? And so we started to gain more attention, and we called ourselves the End in Mind Project. And I love this so very much. Someone sent me this, and I always kept it because I love the conversation starter part of that. I am a conversation starter. I love that title. And that's exactly what End in Mind happens to be. We are conversation starters, which Bruce would love. Bruce was all about conversation, community, and connection. And that is what the biggest ripple has been post Bruce's death, is the formation of the End in Mind Project. So I guess I should put this on my resume, a conversation starter. I do love that. So really, we help individuals and families start these emotionally fraught conversations. And lest you think that we're all about death and dying, we are not. Your friends at End in Mind understand that, as Bruce used to say, we are alive until we are not. So you got some living to do, no matter your stage of life. And Bruce certainly proved that. I think the biggest takeaway for me with Bruce was this amazing ability that he had, even though his body was crumbling because of the ALS, his spirit became brighter. His life, even though his world was small in terms of the physical world was small, if you know what I'm saying, he just couldn't get out. It was really, really hard because he was in a wheelchair. His life expanded, though. And those of us who were around Bruce at the time, and he had this team of individuals, friends and neighbors, and yours truly, we were just astounded, and we hadn't seen anything like that. Certainly, I hadn't seen anything like this before in my life, because I just didn't think it was possible, if you're dying, to have your life expanded as you're dying. But Bruce actually did that. So he was the perfect model, and I was also taken by his ability to unwrap the unexpected gifts that dying offers. And maybe you disagree with me, but there are, I think, urgency, gratitude, perspective. I mean, Bruce and End in Mind embrace and model the embracing of one's inevitable death can help you live with greater clarity and courage and meaning, and in Bruce's case, absolutely love. Let's hear from him.
As I approach the last months of my life, what really has the deepest meaning of all is the love that I share with my family, my friends, my granddaughter. These are things that, in many ways, without them, my life would be meaningless. So I think if I were to be able to wave a magic wand, I wouldn't ask people to do things the way I'm doing them. But what I would do is ask people to examine their own lives and ask themselves the question you asked me. What really gives you a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose? And I think most of us, when we are honest and truthful about that, we would turn to things that impending death really focuses. I can't stress enough. This feels like loss, and it feels like sorrow, and it is, but it's also great joy. In a lot of ways, it's like fireworks. You know, you shoot the rocket into the air, and you anticipate, and then boom, it's this beautiful sparkle, and then it's gone. And I think that's what focusing on your death and how it focuses your life, it's a lot like that.
Of all the things that man said, that's one of my favorite sound bites. I just love that. And that was 2 weeks before he died. So you could hear he was having trouble breathing. But it's so true though, isn't it? I just love what he had to say. I love this too. This is one of my favorite cartoons. It's I know, right? Don't you love that? It's the coolest thing. As Bruce would say, we're living until we're not, people. We're living until we are not. Dang, but we waste so much time in this life, don't we? I mean, my goodness. So think about this, because I try not to waste time. My good friend Margaret Thomas is in the front row, and she understands that I'm what would be the word to use, Margaret? I guess I would say that I'm always in motion. I'm always in motion. My dad used to say it's tougher to hit a moving target that way, but I don't want to waste time, and Bruce taught me that as well. But and I was going through some other things at NPR, and I came across this ridiculous figure that the average American spends 4 hours and 37 minutes on their phone a day. I know. Audible gasps, you should gasp, because I thought that can't possibly be right. So I checked that out, and evidently it checks out. 4 hours and 37 minutes on their phone every day. My math isn't great, but if you figure that out, that's what? More than 1 full day per week, about 6 days a month, right? 70 days a year scrolling, tapping, and swiping. That's ridiculous. I mean, think of that waste of time. I'm glad, in a way, I wish Bruce were here. I could imagine what he'd say about life right now. But he would just be mortified at a stat like that. Mortified. So, and I'm not saying anyone in this room is on their phone for 4 hours and 37 minutes. And if you are, stop it right now, because you're wasting time. You're wasting time, people. Stop it. I want you to step into 2025, if you would, and think about how you want to spend this year. I've been doing a lot of thinking about this, as a matter of fact. Because if you think about it, not to be the rain cloud on this whole thing, but we are talking about death and dying. I mean, 2025 could be our last year. Could be my last year, right? I mean, that's true, right? So 70 days a year on your phone. No way. No way. What else could you do in those 70 days? What else could I do in those 70 days? Nurture relationships, take a trip, soak in the beauty around us, for goodness sakes. Work on meaningful goals. Don't spend 70 days out of a year on the phone. Because time, as you all know, is your most finite resource. My friend Bruce Kramer knew that. He was so shocked when he got the diagnosis of ALS at age 56. 56. He almost lived to be 60, and he thought that would be pretty cool. But 56, and you all know in this room, we all know people who have been diagnosed at very early ages with terrible diseases, and they're not with us anymore. So time is your most finite resource, and I don't know why it is, but it is the one that we spend so much of without any intention. Annie Dillard, who I know y'all know, I love her quote, "How we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives." And my friend Bruce really understood that. I'm working on it. I'm working on that. So I'd like to ask you to think about living your life this year, 2025, with some intention. It's an invitation that Bruce Kramer offered to me. I haven't done very well with that, to be honest with you, although I have made some changes to conserve my time or to spend my time a little more in the way I wish to spend my time. And I gave up, I did a noon show on Minnesota Public Radio and Morning Edition for 3 years. Happy I did it, thrilled I created the noon show, had a great time. All of a sudden I realized all I'm doing is working. That's all I'm doing is working. Because I'd go back home and collapse and take a nap and then do it all again the next day. And I thought, is this really what I need to be doing? And I reread some of my notes from Bruce, because I kept a journal. And I thought, no, I'm getting to an age where I think I got to start really kind of walking my talk when it comes to taking time to live with purpose and intention. So I want you to think about this. What will you regret not doing in 2025? What will you regret not doing in 2025? What can you do, however small, that offers you possibilities for growth and meaning and purpose? And I use that word possibility because my friend Bruce would always use that word possibility. Always. He loved that word. Didn't like the word hope. Now, he used to say, and we had these big arguments, he would say, I don't believe in hope, I believe in possibility. I'm like, Bruce, oh my gosh, why? He said, well, hope is a lovely construct, right? I hope I get that job. I hope she loves me. You know, it's beautiful. It's a lovely word. He said, but possibility is stronger. He said, if I can get out of bed in the morning, the day offers possibility. So I always kind of remembered that. So that's why I use the word possibility. What can you do, however small it is, however small, that offers you possibilities for growth, meaning, and purpose? That's what I want you all to do. That's your homework. That's my homework, actually. So, and part of my homework is to keep doing what I'm doing, obviously, with the microphone, but through End in Mind is to also spread that message. So that is what End in Mind is about, is to get you, yes, thinking about your inevitable death and planning for it and learning how to talk about it. But it is also learning and thinking about how to live with intention. So I'm going to invite you to kind of stay tuned and to join us. My board of directors met recently, and they said, and I told them what I was going to be doing here, and they said, well, what's the message? And I said, just to have people join us, part of our community. You know, we have this community of individuals, seekers, questioners, dreamers, we have this bunch of people who join us online in those crazy shows that we do around the state of Minnesota and at our retreats. So that's what I'm asking you. Not asking for money or something like that. Just join us. You have an opportunity, go to the website. We have a wonderful newsletter that we send out every week, and we're pretty proud of that too. People always want to know, gosh, how strange that you would have gone through this journey with this man, this dying man. You decide to go ahead and create a nonprofit. You're a journalist. I mean, how's this all working out? And I like to say, actually, this work, End in Mind, is the most meaningful work I've done in my career. And I've been around since way too long. Rocky knows that. Rocky was one of the first people I actually interviewed at the Minneapolis City Council. So I've been around for a while. And I've done a lot of politics, sadly. And I liked the political reporting in my career, but the work with End in Mind is really feeds my soul. It feeds my soul, and it is so meaningful. Even though I know that when I bring this up in cocktail parties, people back off. And they just kind of get a little nervous. They go to the crab dip. They don't say anything else. They look at their shoes and then go to the crab dip. And so, yeah, it is. I know it's a little strange. It's a little strange. But endinmindproject.org is where you could find me in my other life. So I invite you all to join us. And right now I invite you, because I think this is the most fun of any event that I do, is when we actually get a conversation going. So I gave you a little bit of background about End in Mind, but I also take questions too. So I know I have 2 microphones in the audience. There's one. And then I know there's a second one that's in the back. So if you would do me the favor of raising your hand, my mic holders are going to leap into action and get to you. I think we have somebody in the front row, and thank you for being brave, because usually you're in the front row, people don't do that, and you have a question. Thank you.
I'm a front row gal because I'm a retired international photojournalist, always in the front row.
You are?
Yeah.
Wow, what a great job.
So first of all, I want to say, do you really need a resume?
Do I need a resume?
That was a question you don't have to answer, but...
Well, you never know. As you know, this business is a little tentative. You might need one at any time.
My name is Barbara Lavalura, and
Nice to meet you.
I lived in Europe for 20 years, and I belonged to an English discussion group. And every year we would change who was in charge. And the year I was in charge, I suggested we talk about death and dying. And this is like 40 years ago, actually, 40 years ago.
Pioneer you are.
Yeah. And nobody wanted to talk about it. No. Most of them hadn't even had a death in their family or circle. And I, on the other hand, had, and I was 40 at the time, I'm 79 now, but I'd had deaths every 2 years from the age of 11. So
You're death fluent.
Yeah, I can deal with this, because you just have to learn it.
Yeah.
But so I think that I have a healthy attitude towards death. But I'll tell you what I'm taking on in 2025, and that's being the best caregiver for my husband, Arnie Bigby, who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's last year.
I'm sorry.
And so we're going through a lot of changes. Every day is different.
Yep.
And I've been challenged because I'm not real patient, but I'm at my age learning patience. And Arnie has been very, very open, and he wants to be the poster child for Alzheimer's because he's telling everybody, this is what I'm dealing with. He's very, very open.
I'm really glad to hear that.
So
I'm really,
hats off to
really
you.
glad to hear that.
Thank you.
Oh, my goodness. I'm trying to think of Marv and his wife, kind of similar to you two. I met Marv, I did an interview with Marv, also person living with Alzheimer's. You would not know that necessarily. And Marv, I think he's still with us. And he was up front. He's like, yep, I got Alzheimer's. Kind of sucks, but I'm going to live with it. And by God, he would show up to all of these events, and he would always be in the front row. And he's delightful. His wife is amazing. And he said, I want people to know, and if I start to tear up, it's because I wish, he wanted people to know that he was still a human being, even with this disease, because so many people look at individuals living with Alzheimer's and other dementias, like my father had FTD, and people freak out. They don't know what to do about it, and they move away from you. And my father was by himself. His friends pretty much abandoned him because they didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to speak to him. So thank you for being public. I really appreciate you being here too. Thank you. Yes, way in the back. Wait a minute. I know this is hard with the mics, but you're doing a great job.
Dwayne's got the mic.
I got
Or
Who's
Bill.
got the mic? Dwayne! Oh, for goodness sakes, Dwayne, how the heck are you? I couldn't even see you there.
I wanted to, first of all, thank you very much for this presentation. It's phenomenal. But I had a question about the you mentioned vulnerability.
Yeah.
How did that grow for you? How did you encounter it, and how did it grow in you? And kind of where are you with it now?
My goodness gracious, that's a fantastic question. I'll tell you, there was a point. It was the 6th interview in. It was the first time I brought Ev Emerson into the conversation, Bruce's wife. And because I said to Bruce, Bruce, listeners really like what you're saying. They think you're gay because you don't have a wife, because they don't hear you talking about your wife. Not that there's anything wrong with this, but we should probably bring Ev into the conversation. He's like, oh, okay. So Ev was kind of like, oh, I don't know if I want to come. So I said, you know what? Let's just talk, the three of us, and we'll just talk, and if it doesn't work, that's why the Lord God made audio tape. We'll just throw it away. It's just fine. We'll just erase it. And Ev was amazing. But there was a point in that one conversation, that 6th conversation, and I don't know what the heck it was, but something triggered me, and I think it was Ev's mother had Alzheimer's. Bruce's mom also had some form of dementia, but Ev made a comment about her mom and Alzheimer's, and then, my dad is in the back of my head, and I burst out crying. And I was just mortified that I did that. I am crying in front of a subject. My God. So I turned off my machine, and I said, I am just so embarrassed that you should see me like this. This is so unprofessional. I'm so sorry. And Bruce said, well, glad we're here now. He said, you dig right in. And I'm looking at him, and tears are, and my mascara is down to my chin, and I'm doing this. And he said, I was wondering when you were going to do this. He said, for God's sakes, he said, it's been 6 interviews. He said, you're just keeping me at arm's length. You're just doing this, and I can tell. He said, you're trying to be this journalist. He said, I know you're a journalist. He said, but why are you keeping me at arm's length? And I said, well, because I am a journalist, and I'm supposed to do that. I'm not supposed to get close to you. And he said, well, what do you think we're doing, blowing the lid off of ALS? It's not some sort of a expose. He said, this is the most human of stories we're telling. I thought, oh my God, he's right. It is. And I just sat there like a blubbering fool. And he said, okay, now we're at this inflection point. And he said, I can tell you're having trouble with this. He said, again, it's a human story. And I think you're the right person to tell it. He said, but I understand if it's too uncomfortable for you, maybe you shouldn't. I don't want you to put you through this, especially, I already asked you to be with me when I'm dying, and that's really hard. He said, so maybe you should think about this. And I thought about it again as I sat there, and he said, if you decide to continue with me, I do expect you to be vulnerable with me, because I'm being vulnerable with you. And I thought, oh, this is hard. And that was the point where I thought, okay, we're gonna have to go ahead and start ripping off these Band-Aids and try to break through this armor, because I am pretty well armored. I really am. And as you know, being a journalist, you just have to be. You just have to be. There's just too much that you experience, and the public arrows are difficult. So I have this armor. So I thought, if I'm going to be with this guy, he's right. I am insisting that he's vulnerable. Yeah. So it's been a process, though. It's been a process, truly. And because of Bruce, I've also been more, I've walked the journey with other people now, too. So, you can't have a mask on when you're with a person who's dying. You just got to be with them. So but it's a process. It's such a process. But thank you for asking that.
We have another question back here, Cathy.
Okay, thank you. Hello.
Hi there. My name's Dwayne. I have 2 suggestions on meeting the issues you've raised here.
Yes.
One is writing your own obituary and revising it from time to time.
Yes.
And then second, to do your own family's genealogical research, Where did I come from? What are my ancestors?
Who am I? Well, as a matter of fact, thank you for bringing up the obituaries, because I'm a big fan of obituaries, and I read them every single morning in the Star Tribune and the New York Times. I love a good obituary. And so End in Mind is going to have an online write your own obituary class with a couple of my buddies from the newspaper world who are great obit writers. So, and I'm a member of the National Obituary Writers Association. So I know what you're thinking. I know that. I know. They call me Queen of Death in the NPR newsroom because I'm the one that gets all the deaths. I'm the one that gets all the deaths, and I'm the one that does the story usually, if you listen. I am the one. So, that's why I'm comfortable with it. So we're going to do an obit writing class online because I think you should write your own obituary. Have I done it? No, I have not done it. I should. I don't have time. So I promise I will. It's an excellent idea. Thank you so very much. The genealogy, as a matter of fact, my mom, who's Polish, she's 87, and she loves Finding Your Roots on PBS, which is a great show. And Don Shelby and I are trying to get Henry Louis Gates Jr. to come to the Twin Cities. Wouldn't that be cool? Oh, that would be amazing. He's busy, but we'll see what happens. So Mom is smitten with Henry Louis Gates Jr., and she said, I don't know anything about my family. I said, well, let's find out more, shall we? So there is a woman in the Twin Cities who specializes in Polish and Slavic cultures. She's amazing, and she's uncovered great. So we've gotten back at least to the greats. So you're right, it actually is quite interesting. Thank you. I appreciate that. I bet I have a question way in the back.
Yes, Ms. Wurzer.
Hello.
The epic movie, Oppenheimer, opened and closed with ripples in a pond and a puddle, and I'm wondering if I missed in the middle of your presentation what Bruce Kramer's ripples were.
Oh gosh. See, this is where I wish Bruce would have, I think Bruce would say his ripples in the pond would have been his family. He has a beautiful family. He loved that granddaughter of his, Hypatia, and he'd be thrilled to know he has a grandson now that he has never met. But some of his ripples would be his family and what his sons have turned out to be. Absolutely, his ripples are in his students. He loved his students, and there are some amazing people who went through his program at the University of St. Thomas. So his students are part of his ripples. And then he would say probably our work together would be a really significant ripple for him because it really was the culmination and allowed him to continue to be a teacher that he loved so much. He was just so unhappy that he had to give up his job at St. Thomas because it just was too hard for him. So he was happy to do this work with me, and he felt it was part of just an extension of his teaching in the classroom. So I would say that he'd agree with me on those three things. We'll see. Yes, sir. How are you?
Good, Cathy. This is a little bit of a thank you and an update. Back in 2004, I did one of those one and done interviews with you.
Oh, no!
No, this is actually a good thing.
Karma is really difficult sometimes. Okay, go ahead.
In those days, I was a mid-level city planner in St. Paul, and everybody wanted to do riverfront revitalization.
Yes.
And I happened to be lucky enough to come up with the idea that became the centerpiece of everything that was going on in this region, called Grand Excursion 2004.
No, yes.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Nicely done.
So thank you for the interview. I still have a CD of it. But I want to share, and this is the right space to be doing it. I had a sort of secret weapon in coming up with this idea. Even though I was the economic planner for St. Paul, I also had a degree in religion from the University of Iowa. So I had all of these crazy ideas about how meaning, value, and purpose can be translated into the civic sphere without being heavy-handed. And that's what inspired my thinking at the time, and that's why I got the interview with you. Now, I'm not 44 years old anymore.
Well.
That was actually 30 years ago. And I'm here at Westminster. Some of you know me. I'm involved in adult ed here. But I was looking for, in retirement, another sort of meaningful, crazy idea. And I got introduced to an organization in Los Angeles, founded by a 90-year-old 10 years ago, to bring his theological perspective into the secular realm there to help make the region more sustainable. And nowadays, I'm an advisor to this organization. The founder was named John B. Cobb Jr., and at age 99, almost 100, he passed away on December 26th. As a result of a fall. He had been, clear and good thinking up till the end, but he had become an inspiration for me. I don't have any known great diseases at this point, but this is another way I think of doing end in mind. I try to stay off the phone, but I am online a lot because I do this all virtually.
I get no shame with that, by the way.
My home office in St. Paul. So thanks for being a part of that part of my journey anyway. And
Oh my gosh.
so good to be here.
How was the interview, by the way? Just curious.
Oh, it was
it okay?
fine.
Fine, good.
You
It was
know,
fine.
I was even more nervous than I am now. Then,
You're
but,
doing great. You're doing great.
Cathy Wurzer, I can't.
No, that's
you know.
okay. Thank you, by the way. Oh my gosh. That is fantastic. I love that. And I love the fact that you're involved in what appears to be a very meaningful organization and effort. So I'm so happy. And I'm sure because you are who you are and the fact that you're here in this group of smart, fun, creative people, I bet you all do have a true sense of purpose and meaning in your lives. And I'm pretty sure you do. So, and I hope so. Who has the mic? Mike, who has the mic? There you are. Hello.
Hello, I'm Margie. Hi, Cathy, and I'm so happy to be here. But I have a huge commitment for the rest of my life to try to change our healthcare system to be more humane. I've been in healthcare since the 70s, and now I'm in hospice also, and I am just...
Are you in hospice care?
No, I mean, I do hospice.
Oh,
I do,
okay.
right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
okay.
no. But I've
And
learned,
thank you for that work.
Yes, and I've learned so much from my patients, like you said. But what I'm concerned about for all of us to speak up about what's happening in healthcare, because it's becoming very unhumane, and people are not treated with compassion or kindness or love. And so I just think we have to shout out, or we have to tell our doctors, we have to tell our caregivers, this isn't okay, or do more shows about it or something. I am very, very committed to trying to do whatever I can to make it go a different way.
Well, thank you for your work. I want to say that. A couple of different things. I mean, in terms of the healthcare system, hasn't it changed? It feels like has changed dramatically just since COVID. I mean, everything has changed. And my mom, who's a nurse anesthetist, was a nurse anesthetist for 50 years. She's no stranger to the healthcare system. She was obviously an active participant. She just cannot believe what we're running into. I'm her caregiver, and we both are like lost in this system. And especially if you're an older person, I have to say, I finally had to stop. I really thought twice about this too, because I thought, if I shoot my mouth off and if they know who I am, that always comes boomerangs on you in social media or something. But she did have a care professional who I really thought talked down to her, and she knows what's going on, and she asks good questions. She just can't hear very well. So I just thought there was a level of disrespect that I find, especially with older individuals sometimes in the healthcare system that really drives me insane. So I finally just put the brakes on it and said, you're just going to have to quit. I mean, you need to hear yourself. So I ask you to please, maybe you're having a bad day, but I just ask you to please show a little more respect toward these older individuals. And the person was pretty surprised. And I'm glad I said something. So what you say about the inhumaneness of our healthcare system is quite interesting and concerning. I don't know what the heck to do about it, other than I wonder, and I've been thinking about this too with end in mind. As you know, healthcare professionals are not good about talking about death and dying. They are not at all. And the only reason I found out that my father was dying was because I overheard a conversation in the hallway at the hospital. That is the only reason I found out, and was shocked, to say the least. And I remember when I heard that conversation, I went up to the doctor and said, "Excuse me, are you talking about the gentleman in 1109? And he said, "Were you listening in?" And I said, "I was, actually, and that's my father. So if there's a problem, and it sounds like there is, you should say something. Is he dying?" And this doctor's face just turned white. And he said, "I had no idea you didn't know." I'm like, oh my God. So it was just this, this gut punch. I just wanted to throw up right there in front of him. And I got to thinking, I wonder then if there's room to maneuver with some of these issues early on in medical school. I don't know. You would think so. So you bring up good points. I'd like to thank you for your work in hospice. Truly, you do the Lord's work, honestly. I remember, that's true. I remember when Bruce, and there's so many misconceptions about hospice. I remember Bruce was sitting he was in a wheelchair, obviously, and he said, I came in one day and plopped down, and he said, "Just wanted you to know, I'm going to go into hospice." And I went, "Oh, Bruce, are you dying?" And he looked at me and said, "Are you serious?" He said, I've been dying since I got the diagnosis in 2011. "Yes, I am dying." And I said, "But what does it mean?" Because we were writing the book. And I thought, my first flash was, oh my God, will I have to write the book by myself? I know that sounds selfish. I didn't want my friend to die right then. And because we agreed that if he were to die before the book was ready, I would finish the book. And I was already his fingers. I was already the typist anyway for the book. So he said, "No, I don't." What did he say? Oh, he said, I said, "Bruce, are you dying?" And of course he laughed at me and he said, and I said, but is it imminent? Thinking that, oh my God, he's going to die and the book's not going to be done. And he said, "I don't know. I've never died before. I don't know how long this is going to take." He said, "I just wanted you to know I'm in hospice because I'm going to get these other services that I really want that will help me live a fuller life till I die." So there's these misconceptions, which is interesting. And even I fell into that trap. It's embarrassing to admit these things now, isn't it? I bet I have a question right here. Yes, sir.
My name is George, and I'm a retired pastor, and I've done a lot of funerals. My sister died in August.
Oh.
We had her. She's 5.5 years older than me. Her name was Gay. Her daughter and son asked me to say a prayer in the service. That's all. I know nothing about the service. We was at a Methodist church in White Bear Lake. Marvelous music chosen, readings that were just dramatic, memories of my sister, stories that I never heard of. And at the end, the pastor looked at all of us and said, "Gay planned this whole funeral. Everything in it was what she wanted." And then the pastor looked over at the ashes that were on a little table and said, "How do we do, Gay?"
Hey, wouldn't you be surprised if there was some response from Gay? That would be amazing. That would have been amazing. Bruce planned his funeral too. He kept changing it over the course of the many years I was with him. And the whole thing was, and I said, Bruce, how long is this thing going to be? He said, I think 2 hours. I'm like, oh, Bruce, that is. And it was a Bruce Kramer extravaganza. It was amazing. And it was pretty cool. It wasn't quite 2 hours, but it was a long one. I think we have time, Liz, one more. All right. We have the gentleman in the beautiful cobalt blue sweater.
Thank you for the gentleman reference. I think most of the guys in this room, enough said, we're rather embarrassed at such deference. My question has to do with who is not here today. I don't think I've identified any of our black neighbors. Have you a comment about what other cultures and other groupings can teach us?
Oh, that is a fantastic question, and I thank you. I thank you so much. You are very observant, and it is true that we began end in mind, and we were pretty myopic in our vision. The board was all white, and one fine day, again, Bruce is like on my shoulders some days. It's really weird. He used to say, always say, as you just said, look around in any situation who's not here, who's not at the table. So, of course, we all know there are cultures that have a very rich, beautiful view of death and dying. And I started to diversify the board and talk about that. And we're in the process of trying to figure out what that looks like for us. You know, is it programming? There was a program we did, Brooklyn Park. And we thought to ourselves, we had the Bruce Kramer messages, and I remember I wanted to open the show. I call it a show, that's just how I think, the program. There was an African-American drum corps that joined us, and they do funerals. So they came in and scared the living bejesus out of everybody because they came in and to these drums that were just like, it felt like your heart was beating out of your chest, and people just went, oh my God. But they turned around, they came in, and they were amazing. They were amazing. Their spirit and their, it was just memorable. And I had a chance to talk to the pastor who was part of that drum group and ask, how does this look in your community? And he said, I don't know if we would do what you're doing because, this is so public that you're trying to get these conversations started. He said, I think it's interesting. And then COVID hit. And we just kind of, every thread of conversation just kind of fell by the wayside. So we're kind of trying to find out where do we fit, where does End in Mind Project fit when it comes to other cultures and talking about how other cultures view death and dying. We had a program last year, at the Minnesota History Center. We tend to do a lot of artwork. We tend to bring in artists for our programs because I believe that art is a wonderful portal that you can use to walk through and have these difficult conversations. I had a Latino artist join me, and her area of expertise is ofrendas, those beautiful funeral altars that are created for each family member. So she joined me on stage. So we had this, again, conversation about what does this look like in your community and what can you share from your community with others. So we're trying. It's just we're kind of an uncharted territory as a nonprofit in that respect. But I'm glad you brought it up because I think you're right. I would be curious to hear what our other friends and neighbors would say about this. Thank you. Yep, you're on.
Thank you. We have a few more questions from the live stream.
Oh, live streamers, thank you, by the way. Is it okay, Liz? We should
They're up
probably take
there.
a couple live streamers. Yes, please.
The first one kind of piggybacks on the last question. It says, do you find that there are some cultures that are better in dealing with mortality and correspondingly getting the most out of life?
I find that our friends, our Latino friends, the Latin cultures are very comfortable. That's in the reading that I've done and in the interviews that we've done, absolutely. I also think that I've talked to, where are they from? Oh, shoot, my mind. There are some Southeast Asian cultures that are also very interesting when it comes to how they view death and dying. So yes, I mean, there are cultures that are so rich in their death traditions and are just unafraid. It is a part of life that you should die, you know? So again, something that we're kind of trying to figure out where we fit and what we should do about that.
Okay, the next one comes from Heidi.
Hi, Heidi.
She says, I'm a nurse and a hospice volunteer. We assist those who are dying with the parting gift, which assists them with writing letters to their families as they are going through the dying process. It's a therapeutic for all involved. Thank you for such a great talk on an important topic.
Oh, Heidi, well, thank you. I'm really glad you do the letters. That's a really wonderful thing that is available, again, if you accept it and you partake in that.
And our final question is, what phrases should you not say to someone experiencing loss?
Well, exactly. There's someone that just said this, and I don't think get over it is that's if you're really, really cruel. But you'll get over it is a real winner. That's top 5. It's for the best. I hate that one. It's not, who are you to make that decision? It's for the best. I understand how you feel. That's really hard because you might really believe that, right? Because you've gone through a loss, but you don't know that loss that person that you're talking to, their loss is like fingerprints. Each loss is like a fingerprint. It's different, right? So you can't really, so I say, don't say that. Don't say that. I know how you feel. What's another one? What's on the top 5 that I can't stand? Well, what do you guys say? How old was she? That's not popular either. No, and no one cares. Why would you care about that?
Conversely, what should you say?
I'm not a fan of, I'm so sorry for your loss. You can start there, because that's easy peasy, right? I'm so sorry for your loss. And by the way, don't say, if you need anything, call me. That doesn't work at all. So don't even bother with that. Just do it. Just say, I'm going to come over with a hot dish or whatever. Just do it. Don't ask. Just do it. I like to go up to a person and just say, I say that person's name, the deceased's name, because that is really important. For some reason, we have a tendency to not want to say the name for fear of upsetting the other individual. So I say their name and try to remember something about that person, some sort of a meeting or some remembrance, some memory. I ask how that the person is, how's your heart right now? Now, I know that sounds weird to say, how is your heart right now? Another Bruceism. I find that for some strange reason, allows the individual, how is your heart? It's not like, how are you? Well, how do you think I am? My life is horrible right now. How is your heart? Then you can get a bit of a deeper conversation going, because I'm okay going there. And when Bruce would say, he hated people to come up to him and say, how you doing? And he'd say, I've got ALS. How do you think I'm doing? So he taught me how to maybe phrase things differently. So I hope that makes sense. So I try to just not say the usual things, which leads us down to a deeper conversation if that person's willing to go there. And usually they are, because you don't find many people who really want to go there, to be honest with you. I hope that makes sense. Okay. You have been absolutely fantastic. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your time. Thank you. Oh, you guys, you don't need to, oh, standing up? What? No. Thank you. I appreciate it. More than you know. More than you know. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I knew this was going to be fun, and it was. Although I have to say, my boss said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Westminster Church." She said, "Why?" So I'm going to talk about death and dying. She said, "Really?" I'm like, and I said, it's going to be fun. And it was kind of fun, right?
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to point out our upcoming programs for spring. Some of you may have grabbed the flyer that we put together. Next month, February 12th, we'll have Artificial Intelligence, A New Era, or the End of Humanity. March 12th, we have Memory Loss and Dementia, Maintaining Brain Health and 10 Warning Signs. That'll be put on by the Alzheimer's Association. And then some of what we've talked about tonight on May 14th, what happens when we die and how to plan ahead. We've got a funeral director who will come in and talk about the different options for dealing with a loved one's body once they've passed. And we'll also have the Reverend David Shin talking about how Westminster can help you pre-plan your memorial service. So once again, thank you everyone for coming, and we do have refreshments outside.